afternoon, good evening, or whatever it is. Work session for Tuesday, October the 8th, 2019. Um, Here's a factoid for you. There will not be a special meeting in the second meeting in October because there's something happening on October the 22nd. It's called Election Day. Early voting started October the 2nd, and goes to the 17th. So if you are a registered voter in the city of Franklin, we're electing at-large alderman and mayor. So if you're watching the program tonight, please go vote and express your opinion in that manner. So now we're going to go on to citizen comments. I have one citizen comment tonight, and that's from Mindy Tate about On the Table 2019. So Mindy, we're going to recognize you.
Great, thank you so much. We're excited to come to you. We're about a month out from our second annual On the Table initiative. We are going to have On the Table kickoff on Tuesday, November 5th at Breakfast with the Mayors. Normally, Breakfast with the Mayors would be the last Tuesday in October, but again, with the election on October 22nd, we felt we wanted to move and push that into early November. So we will kick off On the Table with Breakfast with the Mayors at Rolling Hills Community Church on Tuesday, November 5th. Some of the changes we've made this year is we are recognizing and planning for an entire week of activities, starting with Tuesday. We also are trying to plan events that are outside the typical work day to allow for a wider audience to come and participate. We're looking at some events at the Williams County Enrichment Center, also at downtown locations in the evening that will include food, because one of the key points of On the Table is when you introduce food into a meeting, it becomes a gathering and it gives people the chance to be more comfortable together. So we're looking at that and working on programs for that. Another thing that we've started this year is we're working closely with our assisted and independent living centers. Many of the senior facilities in Franklin and Williams County are going to be hosting events throughout the week that are going to be public events, and they want citizens to come and interact with their residents at places like Brookdale of Franklin, Avenida, Maristone, and Summerby are all planning different events as well as some others. So we're excited about having those activities and events. We also have some events already scheduled at Franklin Elementary and some of the other Franklin Special School District schools. Culminating the week for us will be a new event on Saturday, November 9th from 9 to 11 a.m. called Engage Franklin, and that will be at Columbia State Community College. It'll give a chance for, if you haven't been able to participate in a conversation during the week, you can come and participate in a conversation at Columbia State that morning. But also, we will have a booth of local nonprofits and organizations that have direct volunteer opportunities available. Because one of the things we heard last year is that people were enthused and they were ready to get started and get involved in their community. So we want to offer them information and direct opportunities to volunteer in the community. And that's why we're doing the November 9th event at Columbia State Community College. During the month of October, we're really trying to sign up hosts and identify locations, both public and private. People can host in their home, and we'd love to do that. We have our handy-dandy updated host guide that we can provide to you, and we'll be doing online training and in-person training as well. We're also planning, after the first of the year, we're going to be working with a professional consulting and data analysis firm to take our data from last year and the data from this year's surveys to compile that in a more thorough report with data and information. We've already made some changes to this year's survey that we'll be asking. We're continuing to work on that. So we have a lot of opportunities for improvement this year, but also it's just important that people become involved and engaged. So we're reaching out to the 1,000 people who participated last year, and particularly those 400 who completed the survey, but we're looking for new avenues of engagement through the independent living and other facilities and other groups here in our community. So any questions, anything I can do for y'all?
Okay, great. We
Thank
look
you.
forward to being part of it, hopefully. I did want to mention to the board that we do have an executive session in between work session, and my target is to finish up work session by 6:15. So if you feel like you're wanting to talk a long time, it may be after the executive session, I'll let you talk. In other words, we're going to be a little time constrained possibly. So next is Stormwater Control Measures Maintenance Program.
Let me just make a quick introduction. We've got Jeff Willoughby, who leads our stormwater team, and Ellen Moore, who's a key member of that team. And they want to talk to you tonight about some of the stormwater control elements of our permit, and how it relates to both city infrastructure and other storm infrastructure in the community. So take it away, Jeff.
Okay, good evening. Thank you. Push that. Good evening, and I'm going to give a brief background before Ellen goes into a very brief presentation on this to get you up to speed to kind of why we're doing this and what she's going to talk about, some elements of it. So over the years, as development and redevelopment has come in throughout the city, they've had to implement stormwater control measures on their site through our MS4 permit. Those are done by quantity and quality. So flooding, keeping flooding under control, keeping pollution out of the river. That's the quality and quantity component. And so when they come in, and the stormwater control measure, you're familiar with them: dry detention ponds, wet detention ponds, bioretention, permeable pavers, things like that that mitigate the quantity and quality of the stormwater, all required through our MS4 permit. As they come through the site review process, we require the property owners to sign a long-term maintenance agreement. Basically, what that says is that the property owners are agreeing that they will maintain those features in perpetuity, keep them free of any defects, and just that they're maintained properly, they're functioning properly, just like anything else on a site that you build. It has to be maintained. So that's where we come in here now. Part of this new permit cycle or requirement is that the city ensures that property owners are keeping those features maintained, and they're not just letting them go, letting them erode where it's causing flooding issues or quality issues downstream somewhere. So that's what Ellen is going to talk about. And this is both public and private features that I'm talking about. So we figured before we go into the private sector that we wanted to make sure that all of our public facilities were up to date, were functioning properly before we go on to private and start requiring people to do some maintenance on theirs. We want to get ours in check first. So Ellen's going to go through and talk about that a little bit. If you have any questions, let us know. Thank you.
As Jeff said, we're going to be starting this program later in the fall. And so while we're inspecting these, as Jeff said, this is required for our permit. So we're going to inspect these once every 5 years. So this is going to achieve minimum permit compliance with TDEC. And so we're going to be inspecting all developments that have recorded long-term maintenance plans through Williamson County, and that's a little over 500 right now. So any new development will also be included in that. The city SEMs were inspected over the summer, and I'm kind of going to go through some of the common issues and the not so common issues, just to give y'all an idea of what we're going to see out on site, and kind of talk through those. And these are currently being fixed. As Jeff said, we're doing this to mitigate flooding downstream and make sure that these are being properly maintained, and also water quality issues.
Make sure everybody knows what an SCM is.
Oh yeah, so an SCM, sorry. An SCM is anything installed to control, convey, or clean stormwater. So your storm sewers, your dry ponds, and then you go into bioretention, permeable pavers, and some of the newer stuff that we're having put in. So here are two SCMs on city-owned property. You have Bicentennial Park. The bioretention area there looks great. It just needs some minor landscape, which is done every year. And then you have a water quality unit, which is in line with the storm sewer system underground, and those just need to be cleaned yearly. And we do have maintenance agreements on or maintenance contracts with both of those to be cleaned and maintained yearly. And then we go to a little more issue. So we have some erosion that's going straight into a stream buffer that'll need to be fixed, and Parks is on that. And then actually in this picture with all of the fines and leaf litter, there's actually a storm inlet under there. So it's actually educating, and Parks didn't even know it was there because it's way back in the woods. I found it on the site plan. So it's actually educating and letting everyone know where they're important storm features are, because if you don't know where they are, you can't clean them, right? And then we go into some major issues that could have been prevented, and we hope that are prevented with this program. So at the bank at First Banks, the pavers are actually not structurally stable anymore. The joint material was never put in, and so they're shifting really bad, so replacement. And then this is a sand filter that was installed with a city project, and it's just not functioning anymore. So both of these, if we had been inspecting these and maintaining these bigger issues could have been avoided. No, it's actually Public Works. Yeah. Oh, one of my pictures didn't show up. So what we are planning to achieve, the picture that didn't show up is actually of the green roof at the police headquarters that looks really, really good. We have a maintenance contract on that, and it's being maintained. All the weeds are being pulled. It looks really great. And then we have a pervious concrete installation at Eastern Flank that's being swept, it's being maintained, and it looks really, really good, and it's still functioning really well. So we're hoping to keep these maintained so that they work in perpetuity. Oh, there it goes. Yeah. So this is kind of what to expect. Here's an outline of our inspection schedule. So education is our #1 goal with this. A lot of people don't know what an SCM is to begin with and what they do. And then with through the process of the notice of inspection and anything like that, we're going to try to get every site to do a corrective action plan. So this is basically going through and saying what exactly needs to be done, how they're going to fix it, and the timeline that they're going to fix it. So they can give me the timeline that they need to fix their site, and we'll be able to go through that with them and make sure that they get it done. Enforcement may be needed in extreme cases of non-compliance or non-communication. I'm going to reach out 4 to 5 times to property owners before it would ever go to any enforcement. But if they're not complying and they're not communicating, I have to make sure that these are being maintained. And then if they're cooperating and communicating, no enforcement will be issued, and I will continue to work with them. And so are there any questions? And then here's a cute little robin eggs nest on the green roof. Yeah. Yeah.
What to expect, all of these little,
Yeah. We can go back
blocks,
to that slide.
that's all public buildings?
Yeah. So there's the 500 or so that we have recorded now are all privately owned businesses, HOAs. It can be anything like that. Yes, ma'am.
Other questions? Great report. Did a nice job.
You know these pervious areas that we have companies and, let me give you an example. Publix on Oxford Glen, Liberty Pike, there's a pervious area, grassy area for parking, overflow parking, and they were required to put that in. When we require companies to put those things in today, is there a different method? Because years ago, I don't know how this was put in, but it always looks terrible.
Yeah.
And if it rains, it's a mud field.
Yeah. So those are actually a pervious pavement called grass pavers, and we actually don't allow those anymore in new developments. So that's not something that we're going to see. Yeah, it's just grass. Yeah. But yeah, so we don't allow those anymore in newer developments. So that's not something we're going to see now.
Is there something we can do about those now?
No, and if we run into an issue like that where they might want to do something different in that area, we can go through the corrective action plan and have a comparable improvement to water quality somewhere else on the site, so that they could take that and make it pavement possibly, where you could actually park there and then do a comparable improvement somewhere else on the site and have that as part of their thing. We're gonna work with a lot of these places because we understand that there's a lot of issues out there.
Probably not in many places do anything on that site. So
Yeah.
if they couldn't improve anything else on the site, I'm wondering, this is just one I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of a few others that they could actually come to you and work with you to maybe improve that area.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just wanted to make sure that the future, we were addressing that in a different way, because obviously that was old school.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
definitely.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the point Ellen made about it being primary focus here is about education, making sure people know what they have and what they're responsible for, and work with them on strategies to improve anything that's not functioning at the level
Yeah.
it should. So it's our responsibility as an agency working with this that oversees the permit, but you know, we really want to work with people, make sure they know what they are
Yeah.
responsible for.
Yeah.
And my point, the whole point I was making is, by pointing out that pervious area that was done years ago, obviously had to be old school, because I'm thinking we're not doing that today. We are improving those sites so they're not muddy looking, and they're not, you know, used, if they're used the way they should be used, that they're not creating a bigger mess than they need to create. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good job. We're gonna move on to number 2, which is presentation on the street department's pavement preservation program.
So I think I have Mark and William. Is Steve joining us too? Steve? One of the things we've been looking at, and you know, we spend significant resources each year looking at and maintaining neighborhood streets. And we've looked at some other strategies that might stretch our dollars further and better preserve pavement over the long haul. And so Mark, working with streets and working with engineering, undertook some review of that and review of some options, and we wanted to bring that to you tonight so that you could learn a little more about what we're working on and some of the options that are available to us, we think, to do a better job over the long haul and maintaining our neighborhood streets.
Thank you, Eric. So Eric kind of touched on what we're trying to achieve here. Engineering and streets department have worked really well together with a consultant to not only help us inspect our streets using a standardized methodology, but come up with options for pavement preservation program. They'll touch on it, but you know, according to the consultant, our roadways are in really good shape, which got a lot of credit to the street department and over the years. But we are of course looking to stretch our dollars and make sure that we're spending the money and our resources wisely. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and William, and they'll run through it.
Thank you. I'm gonna go through the majority of the first part, and I'll let Steve kind of answer some talking points later in here. So thank you. We want to bring this forward to you to kind of show you the work that we've done with the pavement preservation program. We'll go over what pavement preservation is, kind of some of the history of what the street department has been doing recently. As Mark mentioned, we had a roadway analysis done by a consultant. They provided a report to us. We'll go over a quick example project and some comparative costs, and we'll go over some considerations and challenges that we'll have to look into while we move forward with this. So what is pavement preservation? It represents a proactive approach in maintaining our existing roads. We want to get the most life out of our roads with routine maintenance, while also stretching our paving budget to touch as many roads a year as we can. The proper application of different asphalt preservation treatments can extend the life of a pavement at relatively low cost. So in other words, we need to be proactive with our roadway maintenance and not reactive, so that our roads do not deteriorate to a point where substantial costs are required to rebuild the roads. Pavement preservation isn't a new idea. The Federal Highway Administration has recognized this for decades, and they actually encourage states and local governments to participate in some type of program like this. TDOT has been doing this for many years. They do a lot of thin lifts on a lot of their state routes. Metro Nashville has been doing this for years. They have a $30 million paving budget, and they spend $3 million a year on pavement preservation methods on their roadways. And one thing I do want to show is there's a website that really dives into some of the important details of why we're looking into this. Normally when the street department paves, it's the worst first. It's going to be the worst, it's going to be at the top of the list, and that's the roads they get to. So instead of that, we want to look at ways we can apply different asphalt technologies to extend the lives and maybe move those up on the list instead of the worst first. A normal untreated roadway has a lifespan of about 20 years, maybe a little bit longer sometimes. Where it shows here is that after 15 years of a roadway's life, the condition drops by almost half. And at 20 years, it declines even further. They call it the point of no return. Almost a crisis stage is once you've reached that 20-year mark and you haven't done any routine maintenance on that, it's hard to come back from. So the goal is if we can use certain types of technologies and asphalt applications, what if we can get 40 to 50 years out of our roadways? And the key is to apply the right treatment at the right time so it prevents any structural damage to the roadway. So this is an example of the dark area, shows the normal untreated roadway, and after 20 years, the condition just drastically drops off, or 15 years, and then 20 years it drops off. But what if at year 7, we were to introduce a fog seal, year 10, introduce some other type of method, year 14 or year 17, continue to apply different technologies at that right time, which would push that condition of that roadway at each time you apply it at a higher condition, at a higher level, a better roadway, but also extend the life and up to 40 to 50 years. So some of the history, as we've been doing, it's annual paving contracts. We mill the roadways and put a new topping on. That's what Streets has been doing, but it is expensive. As I said, it's been worst first. If we can touch a road, twice in their useful lifespan, we're doing really well. Recently, the street department has luckily had some capital bonding given to them, which has helped them kind of stretch their funds and catch up on some things. They've also have tried to use one of the asphalt technologies as fog sealing. They've been trying that for 3 years. So as Mark mentioned, this past spring, we met with some pavement professionals to go over our roadway systems for them to give us some ideas of how we can kind of improve our network. After those meetings, we were recommended a consultant called Civil Link, and they provided the roadway analysis, the preservation program plan, and are providing some web hosting on a lot of their data that they collected. So this is part of the report. As you can see, the ratings on the far right-hand corner, lower corner, you have blue and dark green means that represent the best roads in the city, up down to orange and red, meaning those are in poor condition. You can see we have a lot of dark green, which means we have a lot of good condition roads. The web hosting that our consultant is doing, it's interactive. So on the left, when we pull up their website, these roads are clickable, and on the right, it shows where they drove down all our roadways, recorded it, and we can play back that video at any time. So if we have a concern or question come up from the public, we can look at this, pull it up real quickly, and see if it's been an older problem or something we can address now. So this is the cover pages of the report. It includes the different methodologies we could use. There's different things from fog sealing to slurry seals all the way to thin lifts, different things that we can do. We're still trying to internally figure out what's going to be the best for the citizens, what would be accepted here in Franklin. They give a listing of all the scores of our roadways and also budget scenarios so that we could use this as a document to implement whatever paving plan we want to move forward with. This is a snippet, and as Mark said earlier, this is the miles of roads and the condition. And you can see majority of our roads are in very good to good condition. One thing to think about is, with all the development that's coming online and annexations and different types of roads we're going to be taking in, is that by doing something along this nature now with this program, we can try to keep the roads at this high level. This is an example project, a neighborhood in the city. I put the total area in here. On the left, it shows a conventional plan where we mill and fill after 20 years and then do a substantial rebuild in 40 years. That's kind of the typical thing that we do. On On the right, it's an optimized plan. It shows that if we had started from a newer roadway and at year 4, done some crack sealing, a fog seal, at year 10, do a scrub seal, maybe a slurry seal, and then so forth, down to year 40, we see almost a $2 million savings. Now, this is just a broad example, but this is kind of the background that we're trying to look at to try to save some money and stretch our dollars to be able to touch more roads in the city. So some considerations and challenges that we have is, one, it's going to be a learning lesson for all of us. We know some of the type of methods that are accepted in the industry just aren't made for city roads or roads with curb and gutter. We know the residents may have some input of, the type of treatment. If it's a rougher type of roadway surface, they might not want that. We have to take into account weather impacts and unexpected subgrade issues that may really throw some plans off on what roads we may want to do a pavement preservation project on. Utility work and coordination, that some roads, if they're torn up by utility trenches and lateral services, it may not be a good candidate for pavement preservation. Future annual paving contracts versus projects. Instead of doing annual paving contracts, we may do smaller annual contracts, but we may bid out actual projects showing, well, we want these roads to be a fog seal, we want these roads to be a slurry seal, and we want a thin lift on these ones, that we have a good idea of what exactly we want. And at that point, if Steve would help out with some history of what the street department has done. And
Absolutely. Thank you, William. So, as y'all are very well aware, the State Street Aid Fund is where we typically get the majority of our road resurfacing. And in order to stretch that funding, it is imperative that we look at ways to maximize those dollars through the pavement preservation. And that's one of the reasons we're really excited about the pavement, the pavement preservation projects. And we realize that it's not a one-size-fits-all. However, with the challenges that we have ahead for the handicap ramp upgrades, we are excited about that. So in older developments where we have to currently go in and upgrade the handicap ramps according to the Federal Highway Administration, we certainly face challenges with spending 35 to 40% of those dollars on each project or each road project. And so when we touch the road with pavement preservation, we realize that we can offset or push off some of those savings or some of that cost on that project. So currently, on a given project in a subdivision, we may be spending 40%, 35 to 40% on handicap ramp upgrades. And we realize that we just cannot continue to put that kind of money in our resurfacing project. So that's one of the reasons that we're looking at the pavement preservation.
so also one thing, Steve brought up the ADA upgrades. A couple of examples are two neighborhoods we're looking at this year. One of them has 96 ADA ramps that have to be upgraded. Another one has 54. And the neighborhood that one of them that we're talking about doing, it's $1.6 million. It's $1 million for asphalt, but $600,000 just for the ADA upgrades. And that's the type of things that we're trying to look at ways to stretch our budget to account for those type, ADA ramps that have to be brought up to compliance. We have to account for that for one neighborhood. Yeah, that's just one neighborhood for 1.6 million for one neighborhood.
What's the matter with the ramps?
So we are required under the Department of Justice to make sure when we do a rehabilitation of the roadway, if we pave anything thicker than a fog seal, just a quick spray, if it's real thick, we have to, that triggers the requirement that we have to bring all the ADA ramps up to current compliance. So most of these neighborhoods, if they're 10, 20, 30 years old, those ramps are just not in compliance.
And by ramps, we're talking at the intersections, at the corners.
Yes, correct.
So in other words, instead of walking across the street and stepping up, you have just a flat ramp that people can get up.
Yeah, there's certain,
So-
yeah, yes.
Yeah, and are we required to put, now in my neighborhood, it's just flat. It's, flat. But I've noticed in some areas, they have those dots in them that are
Yes.
raised. Why do they put that in there?
So detectable warnings, those are required to bring it up to ADA compliance. So we have to install those at all those ramps. And so ones that don't have those, and that's a lot of the issues, these older neighborhoods, some of them may actually fall within compliance.
No, they just did ours. They did mine when they paved, I got to get this right, because when they paved Liberty,
Okay,
they came in and did those corners. They did the ramps, and it's all flat. There's no raised portions in those that I know of.
So,
And the reason I ask about that is because if somebody's in a wheelchair, that's difficult. I mean, I don't think that's helping them. And the kids with their bikes and the moms with the strollers and the dads with the strollers, it's like you got to bump, 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 go through those bumps. I don't understand why they're put there.
it's a requirement from the Department of Justice.
I-
It's per ADA, and
Yeah,
it's
I
one of
really don't
those.
care if it's a requirement. I want to know what is the purpose of that. Do we know?
so
It's-
there's
it's-
detectable warning devices, if you would, for the blind.
Well,
It's someone with sight.
so it
yes.
actually helps them, but it doesn't help the people in the wheelchairs. And it doesn't
Correct.
help-
It's for, yes, people with
Oh my
sight
gosh.
issues that can
Okay,
feel
this
that
only
and
had to be
know.
the federal government.
Yes, it's
So
not
there
for,
are-
yeah, it's not for wheelchair.
Bureaucracy at its best.
But the reality is you have different types of disabilities.
Sure.
And so they're trying to have a wide variety of standards. They've evolved over time. ADA's been with us since the early 90s, but those standards haven't all stayed in place. They've evolved over time. So we may build a neighborhood in the early 90s or mid-90s and thought we were compliant, and we probably were at the time with ADA, but those have changed over time to make sure that they function the best way they can. They learn things, and this is the result of that. And so they require us as a community
Yeah.
to be mindful of those and have a system through which we bring them into compliance over time. And so when we do significant work, we're required to look at these and make sure we're bringing them into compliance as best we
Yeah,
can.
yeah, and I'm not arguing with that at all, but it just seems to me that I do have one person out in my area that has a wheelchair, and they said, I can hardly get up that place anymore unless they had electric wheelchair because it's difficult.
We hear that a lot. We do hear
It's
that.
like, okay, we're helping one set of people, but the other set, 2 and 3 sets of other people, we're really making it more difficult.
Yes.
I don't know. I know we're stuck with it, but it just makes no sense to me. that
All
we-
right, we ready to move on?
Anything else? You guys have anything else?
No, that's the gist of it, yes.
So what you'll see going forward is us incorporating in, even some this year in the budget and next year's budget, some different components of this. We did the ceiling over the last couple years, as was referenced, and we're going to continue to look at ways to apply these different methods in different areas in different parts of the life cycle, as was shown to you. I really compliment staff for doing this work because I really think it'll help us preserve what we've got. And our reality is a community that has grown as fast as we have in certain time periods.
Yeah.
All these roads are aging at the same time. So while we are in a very good position now, if we don't have something like this in place, it will cost us far more down the line as more roads hit that point of no, we don't want them to hit that point of no return or get close to that point of no return. And so really, this is a perfect timing for us to put something more broad-based in place that'll help us preserve the resource over the long haul.
Could you tell me in 10 words or less what the Church Street thin lift is?
I can, yes, ma'am. So the Church Street is a perfect example, if you would, of what a pavement preservation would look like. So we realized that Water and Sewer had a project that was coming up in 5 to 7 years. We also, the board had approved a striping plan, if you would, to redo all of the striping along Church Street and place it to just one side with new signage. So looking at Church Street, instead of doing a mill and fill, which would have been somewhere around $75,000 to $80,000, we actually went in and perform the majority of that work for about $50,000.
Good.
So thin lift is one of those pavement preservations when you're trying to extend the life of a roadway for that 5 to 7 to 10 year mark.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick,
Quickly.
I have a question. Is this an old method that's causing this, and we're not doing this anymore? But the only example I can think of right now off the top of my head is going south on Columbia Avenue when you get to McHatcher. Remember, it used to be like, it looked like a little earthquake came and rippled that area, and you drive up to the light, and it's like, what causes that? And are we doing something that will eliminate that?
Yes, ma'am. So it's the wrong mix at the wrong location. So even though that's a TDOT roadway on all of our major road systems, we have adjusted our mix design.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're gonna go with items 3 and 4 together for Carruthers Glen PUD, through the rezoning and also for the development plan.
Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Diana Tomlin. She's our newest current planner, principal planner.
Hello, Diana.
I've met most of you. So tonight, we have before us Carruthers Glen. You all have seen this once before as Carruthers Chase. This is a rezoning, and the rezoning is detached residential 1 to SDR 2.03. The zoning is appropriate based on Envision Franklin, which has a design concept for single-family residential. You did deny this on April 23rd, 2019. It's coupled with the development plan. The applicant is proposing 45 single-family lots on 22 acres. They previously submitted a very similar plan, again, April 23rd, 2019, and that was denied. This plan is slightly different from the previous plan. The changes are primarily a rearrangement of lots, a removal of a portion of the walking trail that was against the county neighborhood lots. There are smaller lots, and there is more open space between the subdivision and the existing subdivision and the proposed subdivision. And the other major change is the front-loaded garages. This development plan does meet the transitional features that require lot size and buffering. It does meet Envision Franklin, except for the housing elevations that they are proposing. Envision Franklin sets a minimum lot width of 65 feet for elevations that are going to have the front-loaded garages. This proposal has lot widths that are 55 feet in width. However, the Planning Commission did recommend removing the staff's condition of approval that required the elevations to come into compliance with Envision Franklin, and moved this forward with a recommendation of approval. If you have any questions.
Alderman Speedy.
How many of the lots were going to be 55 feet in this development? And
All but 2. There are 2 that are proposed to be I think they're corner lots, and so they're going to be larger, but the rest of them will all be 55-foot lots with the front-loaded
so
garages.
Planning Commission is saying that they're okay with the 55-foot lots with the front-loaded garages, essentially? And I guess, you know.
Planning
Majority.
Commission, yes.
Oh, sorry. Ann.
Okay.
So I guess
I'll
my
get you
one
next.
comment would be, and I know we've talked about transition a lot, like Surrey Lane, I think, which is the farthest east road running north and south, I think there are like 17 lots there. And I know those are all under 65 feet. And every one of those homes has front-loaded garages. So,
Yeah, the transitional requirement is essentially that the new lots would be at least 75% of the size of the original neighborhood's lots. So that's where they're meeting that transitional requirement.
And in terms of the front-loaded garage, that's an Envision Franklin statement. Sorry, I'm not too close. That's an Envision Franklin statement, and the goal there is that the house portion accommodate more of the lot than the garage portion. So that's why we suggested that either the lots get larger or the housing type change. It's not that the lots, the 55-foot lot, that's not what we're disagreeing with. It's the housing type that they're proposing on it. So, and again, it's that
And is
larger
that-
goal of Envision Franklin.
Is that where they're talking about the elevation, like, I guess we don't want they call the houses with the snouts out front with the garages, and
Yeah, we
they
want
would at
the,
least have them offset From the,
We want the proportion of the house part to be wider than the garage portion of the house. And so when you have a front-facing garage, we want those lots to be a certain width so that can be accommodated. Does that make sense?
Alderman Martin.
All right, I'm looking at the modifications of standards on page 2. The architecture, lots less than 55 feet in width may not have homes with front-loaded garages per Envision Franklin. Please provide conceptual elevations that adhere with the guidelines. Now, is that what you're saying? Because I'm not real sure I know that's what
Okay.
you're saying. What did you say, the planning commission?
The planning commission removed that condition of approval and voted to move it forward without that condition.
So they're saying go on and have the 55-foot lot
Yes,
with
ma'am.
the front-loading garages. And,
That was their
You know,
recommendation.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
I want to say this to you all and everybody here that's involved in this. When we first talked about this, we asked for certain things, and they provided that. They took away some lots, they changed the walk, they did those things. They changed the 4 lots or 5 lots up at the top. They did those things, but in the meantime, we didn't know that they were reducing the lot sizes to 55 feet, which did not adhere to the Envision Franklin. And as much as I appreciate what they did, I will not support this as you're bringing it tonight. I will not. If they want 55-foot lots, I don't want the garage bigger than the house. And that's exactly what you're gonna have. And I will not be in favor of that at all. If they can put the garages in the back, or wherever it is you all suggested that they put them, then I will support it, but not until.
The width is
Anybody else?
45. Go ahead.
and I guess I wanted to also, it seems like the last time the neighbors were very concerned about the whole blasting thing. I do believe the developer kind of clarified that the insurance company would be required for post-blast surveys, and that would not be a cost borne by the homeowners. I guess if you guys can kind of confirm that.
That was my understanding from when they spoke at Planning Commission, that they would have a pre-blast survey, and then anyone who requested one could have a post-blast survey. And then if there were damages found, of course, those would be covered. And that they would cover the surveys as well.
Alderman Berger?
Can we hear from the applicant?
Sure.
I think they had something they wanted to say. I want to hear what you have to say, because you sat back there and shook your head, yes, and were you agreeing with something?
Yeah, there's 2 points. I'll let Jeremy talk about the blasting.
State your name.
I'm Michael Dewey with Dewey Engineering. Our address is 2925 Berry Hill Drive. This project, just to answer everybody's concerns, this project was approved by Planning Commission last year while meeting the Envision Franklin Planning Commission approved it recommended for approval to the BOMA while meeting all the conditions of the zoning ordinance and meeting Envision Franklin. So it's been proven that this site can be developed under the Envision Franklin guidelines. That was brought to BOMA. However, the will of the community and the will of this board did not see it that way, and they did not want, they denied the project. And so we revised the plan per meeting with the neighbors and hearing what they had to say at the community meeting. And that's the plan in front of you today. The guidelines are not met because of 65-foot wide lots. They're 55-foot wide lots. The topography, as you guys may remember, going back years ago, 2015, 2016, there were alley-loaded product that was proposed for this site. that would have never worked because you'd had alley product or alleys that were 10, 12, 15 feet above the main road, and the garages would have, the finished floor would have been well above or had steps in the, going from the garage down to the finished floor. It just wasn't a feasible project to have garages in the rear, and so whether they're 65-foot wide lots or 55-foot wide lots, both are the same product that the developer is proposing. It's just we're proposing to put them on 55-foot wide lots so that we can appease the neighbors for what they've asked of us. And we understand that it does not meet the guidelines of Envision Franklin, but it meets all of the zoning ordinance requirements, and we've agreed to keep the landscape easement in the back that was recommended for approval last go around. We've agreed to keep that, and we're struggling to figure out how to develop this property. It's a very difficult piece of property, and it's difficult because there's large lots on one side that are in the county and small lots on the other side. So we believe that we're transitioning per the zoning code, and we believe that this is the best use for Mr. Glass's property. And we believe that we've met with the neighbors and done everything we can to try and meet everybody's needs for this property.
Alderman Barnhill, then Alderman Peterson.
Let's go back to step 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, whatever it is. And when this project first came before the board, it had been approved by staff, approved by the planning commission, and then maybe derailed or whatever you want to call it by the board. I'll be quite candid with you. I didn't have a particular problem with the plan. What you didn't address was the blasting issues, okay? Now you've gone back, and I'm not sure how you've gotten sidetracked off of all of what you've gotten sidetracked to. Well, I do know, okay, but we'll not address that. But you had a plan, and met Envision Franklin, met staff, met planning commission, and all you had to do, in my opinion, was meet the blasting issues. And you didn't, maybe you didn't do that or didn't do that, but you've gone, maybe the neighbors did complain about the lot sizes from Falcon Creek. I didn't hear any of that. What I heard was blasting, blasting, blasting. And what I heard was the 4 big lots on the back of the property versus the 5 that maybe you've got here someplace. So, fellas, maybe there's someone on the board that's not going to support this, and maybe there's someone on the board that are going to support this. But you had a plan, and it worked, and it passed everything until it got to the blasting issues here. And I think that each of the board members here have got to explain to you why we voted against not approving that plan, so that you understand what you have to do. I don't think you can go out there in space someplace and try to figure out what we are thinking about. I mean, I don't see how you'll ever get it approved unless each one of us are willing to step up and tell you why we voted against that project. And I'm telling you why I voted against it the time at the board level. Blasting and not addressing those issues with the neighbors of Falcon Creek. Not from any 2-story house, 1-story house, or transitional or 65-foot lots or anything else, okay? So that's my spiel for the evening.
Alderman Peterson.
First of all, just a question. How many lots were in the previous project?
45.
And how many are in this project?
45.
So there has been no change in the number of lots. It was not decreased.
That's correct.
Okay. I think there were some other concerns, at least that I have heard about, was about the lots on the end, where they do not touch any other lots in the development, but they are just off of the street in Falcon Creek. And they would be much different from the houses that are in Falcon Creek in that area, and they're also going to be higher. In other words, you were talking about the topography of the area, and so they're going to be kind of looking down over those, as I recall.
The lots in the rear,
Yes. Mhm.
yeah, so, the topography falls across
Exactly.
the site. So yes, some lots will sit up on the hillside, similar to the lots in Falcon Creek, and some will sit down. But the lots have been made smaller to help protect against that. I think the neighbors were concerned about towering over their
Indeed.
lots.
Indeed.
Sorry.
And the other thing that I want to say is the Planning Commission does not do anything to development plans except recommend approval or disapproval to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. There is no approval by them. It is always to recommend approval or disapproval in the development plan and in the rezoning. So it was a majority of the Planning Commission who did recommend this. But again, still not complying with several things that we were expecting.
Alderman Berger.
I thought how long are these driveways? Because I thought it was 50 feet if for a front-load garage. So the width is 50 feet for a front-load garage with those long driveways. So these driveways are short, they're not long, right? This is not set back. I think the ordinance says 50 feet if you've got a long driveway and it sits back. Doesn't it? I thought so. The longer the driveway.
They're proposing the garage to be attached to the building.
Offset.
And so offset but still attached to the
Offset.
building, and so there's a setback from the front facade. There's a setback from the front facade, but the driveway length, I'm sorry,
I
that's
thought
not
there was
ringing a
something
bell.
with the driveway. I swear there was something
No.
when it went back further, but obviously that's not the case.
They can check on that.
Yeah. I
You done?
swear yeah, I guess so.
Does the
Alderman.
plan that's proposed tonight comply with our prevailing zoning ordinance?
Yes.
So, where it doesn't comply with Envision Franklin.
With the combination of the lots they're proposing and the houses they're proposing,
Okay.
that combo.
So, and the topography, I assume that the staff agrees that the topography of this tract pretty much precludes alley-loaded homes. That'd be extraordinarily difficult on this lot.
It would.
Okay. So, I'm
I
gonna
will
say this as tactfully as I guess I'm able.
Just use big words, not by
Right. I'm kind of worn out of getting whipsawed between Envision Franklin and our zoning ordinance because I didn't vote on Envision Franklin to begin with. The Planning Commission did. We didn't. And what happens is when people comply with the zoning ordinance, which we did make, but not Envision Franklin, and there is opposition, the opposition comes in here and jumps up and down about Envision Franklin. But when someone, I guess theoretically it could happen the other way too, where someone complies with Envision Franklin but not our zoning ordinance, although it seems like Envision Franklin tends to kind of raise the bar. So I don't know that I've seen or recall a circumstance where someone complied with Envision Franklin but not the zoning ordinance, I suppose that's possible. But basically, what we're doing with these irreconcilable documents, one of which we voted for and one of which we didn't, is we're basically creating a grievance for people who don't want the outcome that the applicant seeks. And it puts us in the position of making it look like we don't care. If I vote to uphold a plan or to approve a plan that complies with the zoning ordinance that I did vote on, but it doesn't comply with Envision Franklin, then I look like I don't care, and I'm willing to just throw out planning documents and ignore them willy-nilly. But I didn't vote on Envision Franklin. So I'm kind of tired of that. Are we gonna fix
Well,
that?
that's why you're updating your zoning ordinance right now. That's exactly what's going on.
Okay, well-
Is the updated zoning ordinance better aligns, and that's essentially the board codifying elements of Envision Franklin into your new zoning ordinance. So
Okay.
you are caught in that in-between time where we've got a new comprehensive land use plan, and we're getting our zoning ordinance
Okay,
updated to
but
better
here-
reflect that.
all right, well, but all that does is pose squarely the real problem here, which is this bottom-up planning. No offense to the planning commission, but we're essentially being told what our zoning ordinance should say by the planning commission, rather than us tell the planning commission what we want to see. So that's really where I was headed with this line of questioning, is that not everything about Envision Franklin is something I would have voted for. But now I'm being put in a position of simply fixing this problem by essentially making Envision Franklin our zoning ordinance. I didn't vote for that. I never got, that's a planning, we've essentially delegated all zoning control to the planning commission at this point. Not plan review, zoning. They have now essentially, this situation has now essentially usurped the function of this board to create the zoning ordinance. Now, I can vote against the zoning ordinance, but imagine how that looks. Not that I really care anymore how it looks, but now I'm in the position of saying, well, if I didn't like Envision Franklin, details of it or elements of it, but then people bring me the zoning ordinance to fix that problem. They're not fixing the problem, they're just creating a zoning ordinance that complies with a planning document that I didn't have anything to do with.
The better part of 3 years has been spent on both of these, gathering your feedback as well as the communities to both do the land use plan and the zoning ordinance. So neither of those were done in a vacuum, neither of those were done to you. They were done with your input. And the land use plan is a creation and responsibility of the planning commission. It's not, and that's not unique. That is pretty typical.
Right.
But let me let Emily respond to
I
it.
mean,
You may have some other.
There's particular issues. We have tried our best throughout this zoning ordinance process to have individual one-on-one meetings, asking targeted questions to find out which particular issues might be points of contention and things we need to address. This zoning ordinance is not yet adopted. We do have the ability still to look at a few of these, but we are moving forward at a relatively quick pace at this point, so we would love to hear from you if there are particular concerns.
This lot width thing is an issue.
Okay.
And I would like to know why our zoning, when did our zoning ordinance fail us with the lot widths that we had in place? And why is it that Envision Franklin recommended basically widening them? And why is that a better planning outcome amidst the policy considerations that we have, which include a mix of housing prices?
Sure. And
I don't need an answer to that right now.
Well, I would
'cause
like
that's
to
not what
address
this
it
applicant's
just
here for.
momentarily, since this is on the table with this particular application. The issue has to do with front-facing garages. And if this were an alley-loaded product, the lots could be much smaller. And I understand that there are topographical challenges on this property, but not every property is conducive to one particular house type. And in this situation, perhaps the best scenario in the planning staff's mind would have been to drop the unit count slightly in order to accommodate homes that meet Envision Franklin. However, it is understandable if the board does not agree with that and would like to shrink the lots and allow homes that do not necessarily meet the zoning requirements, the future zoning requirements rather, or ones that we might change, so that there is an equal proportion of garage to house. That was something that through all the visual surveys, all of the outreach we did during Envision Franklin, as well as Planapalooza, we heard from the community that they did not want to see front facades overwhelmed by garage fronts. And so that is something that we have really implemented through the zoning process. Now, of course, if we would like to discuss that further at a future date, we would get into that.
Okay, that's fine, but even in the alley-loaded Envision Franklin, the lot widths are being widened.
We have discussed actually making them smaller at this point.
But what's coming, but Envision Franklin set a minimum lot width wider for alley-loaded than our zoning ordinance currently does.
It did, because we heard actually that there were some challenges in site development with the number of very small lots and drainage issues as well
Okay.
as
That's what when we
density
get, when we
challenges.
have that conversation in the abstract, not
Sure.
not with an applicant sitting here for a specific project, I want to know what the best policy is
Sure.
and why.
And it's not done in a vacuum, just to address that too. All of these lot size issues go along with how much sewer is required to serve a property, how it affects our transportation plans, because the minute that the lot sizes are made smaller, the assumptions that were done for these larger plans to plan for infrastructure are also impacted. So that's one of the reasons.
All that.
I'll recognize you in a minute.
I'm not saying it was arbitrary. I just need to understand it because, as you know, I'm also pushing for developers in the market to have the opportunity to create homes at price points that don't start with a 5. And so when we start widening out lots, necessarily what happens, of course, is price point goes up, or the price point can't be as low. So those are competing policy initiatives. I understand that. I just need to understand why it is, if we're going to set, and I look forward to the day that we don't have this conflict between a document that the planning commission made and the zoning ordinance that we made, because it leads to this, where a developer comes in and says, I followed all the rules in the zoning ordinance, and now I'm getting hung up on, or in this case, both, and still got denied. Cycles back around and now gets told, yeah, well, you comply with the zoning ordinance, but not Envision Franklin. And so it leaves us in an untenable position, because to vote for a project that complies with the zoning ordinance, but not Envision Franklin, allows people to draw the conclusion that some of us just don't care what our planning documents say.
I'm going to give you ability to respond, and I have Alderman Martin, so.
My name is Jeremy Boshelok, and I'm the applicant. I would like to address the issue of the front facade of the home. I keep hearing over and over again that the garage is larger. All the plans we've submitted on a 45-foot wide building envelope, the garage portion is actually larger. I'm sorry, the home portion is larger than the garage by approximately a foot. So, it's not, the garage is not larger. You have about a 22-foot wide garage and a 22-foot 8-inch wide portion. So they're about equal, but slightly larger to the house size. Also, we've went out and met with some of the other people in the county and have tried to make concessions to some neighbors that were requesting specific lots being removed by their houses. Mrs. Peden being one of them at the, I guess, western end of the property, and she's up against Carruthers. We did remove 2 lots next to her, and down at the end of our proposed road, back at Cross Creek where Mr. Horeca's property is, we had lots backing up adjacent all the way along his property line, and we've removed 2 of those as well. So we're shifting some density around, but our overall density in the project really hasn't changed. It's been at 2.03 or 2.04 units per acre, which is transitional. We're trying to make people happy in the surrounding neighborhoods, put some smaller lots in the back, and the smaller lot size is just trying to make the project work overall for Mr. Glass and for everybody sitting here.
Alderman Martin.
And I appreciate everything you've said, and I know that you all have worked hard on this. I don't know about the rest of the board members, but I've spent a lot of time down here going over Envision Franklin and the zoning ordinance. And I've had individual meetings, I've been to other meetings, and maybe I'm the only one, but there's not anything on here that is a surprise to me. And I think we are in a very precarious position that we are in the transition. We haven't gotten the zoning ordinance approved yet. But I feel like we're going to be, you all are building what you think is right. We have to vote for what is going to be here forever. You're going to build these houses and people are going to move in, and people will ride down the road and say, how in the world did they let that happen when the house looks smaller than the garage? You know, that kind of thing. And I know what you're saying, that it's not, but if the perception is there, I don't know. I would have to look at it more, but I would really like to see those garages back away from the house if there's any way in the world you can do it. And I really appreciate everything you've done to really try to do what the neighbors want and what we want. But back to this Envision Franklin, you know, this is something that doesn't surprise me at all. I knew what was in there. And then the zoning ordinance, I've got every page read and underlined. So it's not anything new that I know that it's going to gel. I know that it's going to mesh like it should.
One thing, I did vote on Envision Franklin, and to be honest with you, I thought I read it as much as anybody did. I'm still finding some things that I did not know were in there, and that specifically about the consequences of some of the things that were in there. And but on this, how wide are the garages?
22 feet.
Well, I thought the whole lot was
23.
45 feet.
Yes. You have 5-foot side setbacks on each side.
55.
55 foot lots.
55, okay.
Any other comments, any other direction?
You know what you gotta do to get it passed.
I believe so, and to address your concern from before about, we also thought that the major concern was blasting. And when we submitted a plan to planning, there was some reserve, and I'll let planning speak to this, but there was some reserve to the plan that was submitted. They said it wasn't enough of a change from the previous plan. So that's why we've changed it to the way we did. We had to make changes to this plan. Otherwise, because it was denied procedurally, we would have had to wait a certain amount of time if we didn't make significant enough changes.
That's not quite the case. We just wanted to make sure that they heard the concerns of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and they were making the appropriate changes. When we first looked at it, it didn't seem like they did anything at all, and it was just our guidance that, to speak candidly, hey, you got denied the first time, you might want to make sure you're making the appropriate changes so that it is adopted the second time.
Did you hear, what were the concerns that you heard from the board when we denied it? Do you remember?
Some of them I remembered. I do remember the 4 lots at the top cul-de-sac, that there was a lot of debate on whether or not those felt a piece of the neighborhood, and that if those can feel contiguous and a part of this neighborhood versus Falcon Creek, as well as the size. I heard that the lots were too big overall from Falcon Creek, and I heard that the lots were too small overall from
Yeah.
Cross Creek.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a tough one.
It wasn't just blasting.
Yeah, it wasn't just
Put it that way.
blasting.
I mean, that was a concern, but it
We
wasn't
heard
the
some
only thing.
concerns about the trail that was Meandering Way kind of crosses over close to Biltmore, and then south of that was an open space that had a trail in it. The Cross Creek neighbors had concern that just that proximity of a trail to their lots, and so I do believe they removed that on this plan, as well as put some additional buffering plantings there as well to just help buffer that zone between Cross Creek neighbors and this new neighborhood. And I think that's all I heard.
And then the blasting.
And then the blasting, which is not something that planning can address on a plan,
The
but
city
that
is
is,
not in that, yeah.
right, that's not, blasting isn't something the city can regulate, that's a state regulation.
How many feet is the garage setback from the facade, of the front facade of the house?
10 feet.
10? Okay.
Can I comment on the blasting too? We plan on bringing a blasting expert before the board to answer all those questions. We brought actually our blasting contractor to the neighborhood meeting and had everybody ask 100 questions regarding that. We'd like to bring actually the seismologist that actually performs the blasting survey and has all those questions. I could bring the insurance carrier if you'd like, but it's a pretty simple process. I think we kind of got off topic. I think people didn't really understand, and maybe we didn't understand thoroughly the entire insurance process of doing the blasting survey and how one would file claims. And now we've been thoroughly educated on that. We can bring someone to speak to that, to address any concerns that you or neighbors would have.
Well,
All right, we're ready to move forward.
I'm glad you
Item
brought them to the
5.
people, though. That's where you should take them, and that's right.
Item 5,
Thank
Thi-
you.
contract
this is-
2019 for parkland impact fee.
This is a pretty straightforward payment of the impact fees
Yeah.
for the associated, it's straight payment of those fees associated with the proposed development that you
Okay.
just talked about.
Item 6 is sewer denial for 3631 East McEwen Drive.
As Michelle's coming up here, this is an item that was talked about at the August Capital Investment Committee. It was a request for denial of service, and the committee asked us to look at ways that they might be able to tie in. There are some significant challenges from a topography standpoint and potential impact on the McEwen 4 project that maybe make that not a realistic option, and we wanted to bring that back to you for further consideration. This is on both agendas for vote tonight, but it's very difficult to extend sanitary sewer to this site, and we've looked at
And
about 3
expensive,
different
and
options to get
expensive,
there.
yes.
Very expensive and very difficult, so.
Well, we're not paying for it.
So, yeah, Vicky's pulling up the presentation. It's just a couple of slides where I kind
Yeah,
of wanted to
go ahead.
outline kind of some of the problems that we're having. Let's see, so we'll just go through this really quickly, kind of an overview of the property. It's 4 houses that are kind of in question right now. So we've received an availability request from one of them, but there's 4 of them in that group. Why this is brought before you tonight, and then some of the impacts that we're gonna see, and then a discussion, whatever leads to that. So these are the 4 properties right here. You can see the one that's highlighted is 3631, and then it's the 4 properties to the northeast from that are the ones of concern. So we have an existing force main that's running down McEwen. That's currently under McEwen. It's going to, the plans, it will still be under McEwen in phase 4. The closest gravity sewer we have is up in Avalon on Canterbury Court, which is kind of up to the north right there. If you've driven past these areas, you'll see that it's a pretty significant grade up to this. So we initially brought this request in front of CIC at the July CIC meeting. They were requesting for denial. They want to do some remodeling through their house. Williamson County requested that they kind of go through our process. In August, we received the request at the end of July after the CIC meeting. We brought it to August. In August, it was referred to the full board because it is within the city limits, but there's some construction impacts that make it a little difficult. So I know this is a little confusing. So this is our contour map. So it's the topographical kind of layout of this property. You can see, you can see the parcel lines that are in the white. The black kind of diagonal lines are the contours. And what that is really showing is, so the Canterbury Courts gravity sewer that's up on the northwest corner of the slide is the gravity. The area down to the house is a 45-degree slope. So it's a pretty, well, so the black is 5-foot contours. There's red ones in between there that are 1 foot, that are a little bit harder to see. So it's a little bit of a challenge. What we do in these circumstances, we've done them before, is the water department brings the sewer service line to the property line. We would set a clean out, and then the property owner would be responsible for taking the service from the property line to their house, wherever their plumbing deems it most appropriate.
But that's significantly uphill.
Yeah, it is about, leading into the next slide. So it's about, so between those two, it's about a 45-degree slope, which is sewer is at about, we typically lay gravity sewer at a less than a 1%, 2% slope. So I mean, it is pretty, we have some safety concerns. We've looked at this a little extensively to kind of see how we would get a track hoe up there, how we would get a hoe ram up there. So it's on a slope. We anticipate, as with Middle Tennessee, we're gonna hit rock. We're gonna have to hoe ram, which is the ding, 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 which is, gonna be loud, it's gonna be obnoxious. We would have to get an easement, so you can see, so there is, right to the northwest of that property, to the Canterbury Rise, there's a small Avalon HOA easement that we would have to obtain. So the homeowner would be responsible for that as well. So that's in the first option of going up. The second option would be going down, so coming with gravity. That would be about 2,000 feet of sewer main that we would have to lay. The problem with that is that we would have to lay it in McEwen, so we would have to redesign those plans to put a sewer in there. We can't connect a low pressure system into the force main we have. The pressures are gonna push the wastewater, the sewer back up into that house. So we would have to lay a new main for that. We'd have to get another easement through McKay's Mill to connect into a gravity main right there. So with that.
So it's difficult and it's very costly. Ballpark number you gave
So-
me was around $200,000 to
Right.
just get the line there.
The homeowner has to be denied anyway.
So
Yep.
we just did. Yeah.
So why are we
That's
arguing
what we're
about it?
recommending.
Why?
We were asked by CIC to explore tying into the central system. And we've explored it, and it does not make good sense just from a design and a cost and a safety standpoint.
perspective.
And we don't want to delay a
Do it.
major road
If
project.
they want it denied, they want it
Yep.
denied.
Item 7, recommendation to reject all proposals for electronic and paper bill presentment services. Any problem with that one?
No, no.
Item 8,
Good job, Chris.
Resolution 2019-106, authorizing the city of Frolicton to provide sanitary sewer services to 2369 Henpeck
Oh, yeah, we
Lane.
have this one.
This one also came up just last week
Yeah.
at CIC Capital Investment Committee, and Michelle's been able to work through that arrangement to provide a connection into the sanitary sewer system for one of the nearby residents on Henpeck.
Yeah, so 2369 is the pink star that we have up there. This is, if you can remember back a couple months ago, the Scrambler's Knob availabilities that we did, we're gonna approach this one the same way. So providing them sanitary sewer service is not in our master plan. It's the line that you can see kind of coming to the southwest right there, that's the master plan line. They would be connecting northward into the green line, which is the Henpeck interceptor that we're currently under construction with right now. So that property to the north of the green line, the big barren area, that's the new school. If you can kind of picture all that. So we have, so right now the agreement that we've talked with the homeowners that we intend to do was that they would be responsible for reimbursing us the cost that it would take us to make the tap and taking it to their property line. So it would be a small bore underneath the road, to the south side of the road. It would be that he would agree to participate in any future special assessment district to lay that master plan line, in addition to all those other homeowners right there. And then that the agreement would be recorded in the Williamson County Register of Deeds, just in case for future homeowners to be aware of that as well.
They also would agree to annex into the
Yeah,
Franklin.
and
In the
to
annex.
annex when we
Yeah.
deem it appropriate.
Yep. And we pass
And this
this
is,
4 to
yeah,
0.
this is what the
We pass
capital
this 4 to
investment committee
0.
recommended we do.
Yes.
Yeah, so the in front of you tonight and for the voting session is a resolution that would give Eric the authority to enter into those
It was
agreements.
full support at the, full support.
Item 9, ordinance 2019-32 to amend Title 8, Chapter 1, alcoholic beverages, basically updating to match Tennessee Alcohol and Beverage
fine.
Commission changes.
Want to thank Angie Johnson for working on this. This is one of her assignments as a new team member.
And 10 is ordinance 2019-42 to reduce the speed limit on Natchez Street to 25 miles per hour.
This
What
had
is
come
it
forward
currently,
as a
30?
request from the neighborhood to review this. We've basically done the study we are required to do, we require of ourselves to do, and it justifies a reduction in the speed limit from 30 to 25.
Alderman Brandt.
I brought this forward, and Ms. Lane is out in the audience, specifically because of the community center and children playing across the street. There's a basketball court. They put a fence up to try to deter the children from chasing basketballs out in the street. And it's just a pedestrian heavily frequented neighborhood. So I don't know that we're going to have any problem with this, but I just wanted to encourage us to definitely reduce it by 5 miles an hour. I just think it would help the safety of that neighborhood. And I mean, yeah, I just want to advocate.
Alderman Peterson.
I think it would be good. Let's just have something, though, that makes a big notice to people that that it's changed.
Yeah,
That's all
we
I said.
do make sure people know. We use message boards to make
Good.
sure people know that that's
But-
changed.
but leave it up for
So,
more than a
yeah.
week.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, the study justifies it, plus 25 is a more typical residential
Absolutely, absolutely.
speed rate, so I think this makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Item 11, ordinance 2019-31, an ordinance to prohibit on-street parking along both sides of the entire length of Benelli Park Court.
And this has been requested by residents. They've surveyed their neighbors, and I think all but 2 have signed off. All of them now? Okay. Okay.
And who are you?
Go ahead and hit your button down there.
Hit your button and tell us who you are.
Green light. Let's have green light. Great.
I'll move. All right, David Rogers for the HOA. To answer any questions, we're asking for signs on both sides of the road. There's common area at the beginning, and it's a parking lot. Not only construction workers, but somebody across the street who runs a business, they park there. It makes it real difficult to get out of the road. The reason this is different than Buckworth, which would be one street up, is Buckworth has houses to the street, but there's some common area. Yes, ma'am.
Alderman.
What do you mean somebody across the street running the business?
Well, I don't know that for a fact, but I know that there's a lot of traffic in and out of there, and they're parking over across the street in our little spot.
Okay, we'll check on it.
Okay. But it includes construction workers and people that are just going for a run. It's just a little spot because there's common area. It's a place people park, and I don't think a fire engine could turn into the road.
I just wanted to ask a question. How did this street get to be just 22 feet anyway? Because I wouldn't thought that would have worked for the fire, would it?
No, it was designed. When we were discussing it, that cross section does meet our
Okay,
standards.
just checking.
Yes.
But it is narrow. You're right. It is very narrow. If people are parked, they park almost every day on both sides, and we can barely get out, and a fire engine would have trouble making that turn.
Can we do that? Can we put no parking?
Yeah,
zones?
that's what this would do, based on the request of the
ordinance
neighbors,
says.
and appears that all of them now are supporting it.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's what we do before we bring something forward. We make sure there's support in the neighborhood to change the parking.
It's just a small street with 7 or 8 neighbors, a cul-de-sac, and everybody's on board.
Okay, item 12, consideration contract 2019-0292, updated water service area agreement between Mill Crofton and City of Franklin.
We're proposing to shift some properties that are in our water district and Mill Crofton's thinks it makes more sense in terms of how we serve, especially some city facilities. I'll let Vernon and Michelle take you through that. We'll have a more specific agreement between city and Mill Crofton that will provide for that. But tonight, we want to just show you basically the map that shows what properties might be shifting into the city water district and what might be shifting into Mill Crofton's.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, Alderman. I thought we were going to be able to pull up, or I'd be able to pull this up here, but Vicky is pulling up a map. It's a large file. But essentially what this agreement does, it clarifies some previous discrepancies with the service area between the city of Franklin and Mill Crofton Water Utility. This agreement was originally established more than a couple decades ago, and the mapping at that time was not as exact as it is today. With our GIS technology, we can hone in better on property lines. And what had happened is Mill Crofton served some areas that were in the city, and the city had served some areas that were in Mill Crofton's district. So we went and looked at the areas served, came to an agreement on the boundaries, but most importantly, what Mill Crofton did was they agreed to allow us to serve the new Southeast Park and treatment facility if we build it out there off Carruthers, as well as the new fire station number 7. Okay. In return, they will, when the Ag Center, if it ever redevelops in that property on the northeast corner of Goose Creek and I-65 that you see highlighted in yellow, that little speck there is the fire hall, that will revert back to Mill Crofton because it is in their district. And then the other area that you may notice, the Steak and Shake, that's on the corner, which is again on the northeast corner of Carruthers Parkway and Highway 96, and that big box shopping, that store that's behind it, that will revert back to Mill Crofton. The city of Franklin is currently serving the Ag Center area as well as the Steak and Shake, and that big box will revert back to Mill Crofton when it redevelops. Essentially, that's the substance of the agreement.
Alderman Peterson?
I'm fine with it, except that this division was done many decades ago, not just 2. And the other thing was, I thought that those the lines, the boundary lines, were set by the Congress.
I'm sorry, we're
I thought the boundary lines for the water utility districts were set by Congress. That
No.
you check back.
I don't know how they were originally set,
They
but
were.
we can, between us,
Okay.
shift properties.
Okay, well,
So I
that's
don't
just
kn-
what I wanted to
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure.
I'm not sure about the original, that may be true, but this,
No,
we have
no.
talked with attorneys about how we may be able to, through an interlocal agreement or some
Okay.
contract,
But-
shift these properties by mutual agreement.
As I say,
Yeah.
because, and that's been many decades ago, but I remember there was a lot of concern about maybe the city trying to take over some other things, and they said, no, you'd have to go to Congress to change the lines.
And you can see by the maps, even though they are very, very large files, that they drill down right to property lines as they exist today. So it's much more exact.
All right, we're going to finish the work session. We're going to give Angie just a second to finish recording the work session, and then I'm going to read a notice. We're learning new things. It's painful. And we have a new way to tell time. 6:15 looks more like 6:30, but it worked out.
Just can't do it before 6.
Okay, notice is herewith given, a special meeting of the City of Franklin Board of Mayor and Aldermen will be held on Tuesday, October the 8th, 2019. The special meeting will be held at 5 p.m. following the work session in the boardroom of City Hall, 109 3rd Avenue South, for the following purpose: adjourn to executive session. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session. And who's Alderman Martin? Seconded, so all in favor say aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll now adjourn to executive session. We'll come back normally. At 7 o'clock, we will not have to. Yeah.